You became very well known on Twitter for financial education, everything from the one-off tweets to these long threads explaining kind of complex concepts in very simple terms. What is the fascination with financial education? Why do you think that's so important?
Yeah, it goes back to my upbringing. Education was always important to my family. I mentioned my father is a professor. My grandfather in India was a chemist, was a professor, and it always struck me, this idea that talent is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. We talk about that a lot. I've seen it all over Twitter. People talk about it. And to me, education is the pathway to fixing that. Education is the path to evenly distributing opportunity across the world, in the US, but also globally. And it struck me back in this is March, April, May of last year, 2020. COVID hits. The economy is an absolute disaster. People are losing their jobs left and right. But all of a sudden, the market comes roaring back. And there were all these people out there, all my friends, family, teammates. I was kind of their resident finance guy. And so I was getting texts saying what's going on? How the hell is this happening? Why is the market roaring while the economy is in the tank? And it just struck me that all of these concepts around finance, investing, et cetera, have been overcomplicated by the kind of incumbents, the insiders, quote unquote, for way too long. To me, it's not that complicated for the most part. And the insiders have intentionally overcomplicated things in order to keep the outsiders out. There's this whole environment around finance of, the insiders wanting to make it seem cloudy and complicated so that you don't feel like you can do it yourself. My parents feel like they need to go pay a wealth advisor some exorbitant fee because they're made to believe all of this stuff is too complicated for them to understand. My parents are super well educated. They're really smart, but they're made to believe that they can't figure these things out for themselves. And it just doesn't sit right with me. And so back in May, I started thinking, okay, what's some way that I can, in a small way, start to be a part of a solution around this and start to spread information and make people realize that they can do these things on their own, that they can figure these things out. And so I took to Twitter. I had 500 followers at the time when I wrote my first thread, which was this Mr. Federico thread that everyone still talks about, which I find hilarious. But basically, I was out on a walk and came back home, sat on the floor of my garage, and basically just had this idea of a story I could tell to explain how Fed intervention in the markets is driving up asset prices. And I did it with this fictional character, Mr. Federico, and it was very tongue in cheek. But it got picked up by a few big accounts. Chamath retweeted it. Scott Melker, my friend, retweeted it. And all of a sudden it kind of took off and it snowballed a bit from there. But the genesis of it was really, let me try to demystify these concepts, using simple language, no jargon, make it accessible, make it digestible, give people the Toyota, not the Ferrari, for lack of a better way to say it.
Yeah. And so when you think through, let's say that we could give financial education to everyone. It was free. It was accessible. They paid attention. They learned the lessons. What's the impact on the market and maybe on their personal wealth once we actually get people educated? Because I think a lot of folks hear, financial education, they generally think yeah, that would be cool if we could do that. But they don't understand how impactful it could be.
Yeah. Well, when I think about my own life or anyone's life for that matter, what is the fundamental goal that most people have in life? It's to take care of their family and their friends, to live a happy life and to be able to support those that they love. And wealth creation, building wealth, generating income, knowing what to do with it is foundational to that. I don't know how you can have that end without understanding, the pathway to it. And that's through financial education, financial literacy. I am baffled that in high school or middle school, I learned about mitochondria. I learned about the Ming Dynasty. I learned about isosceles triangles and the Pythagorean theorem, but I didn't learn about taxes. I didn't learn about investing. I didn't know what the S&P 500 was. I didn't learn about budgeting. I mean, it's just insane that we have this education system in the richest country in the world where we're not educating people on how to take care of themselves for the future, how to build wealth and achieve the goals that they have for themselves financially.